Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Just one subject today that I have to actually be careful about discussing because YouTube censors anybody who criticizes the election that we just had. I can't say anything critical about the November 3rd presidential election, or I risk YouTube taking the video down and maybe taking the whole channel down. So I have to be very careful. So I better stipulate right up front that notwithstanding anything I say from now on going forward in this vlog, it was a wonderful election. It was perfectly fair, no fraud. And Joe Biden is such a wonderful president. I wish he were king. I wish he could just be coronated king and just rule forever. But I'll just have to be satisfied that we get 4 years of Joe Biden because of this perfectly fair and transparent and wonderful election. So I just want to build on this fairness and transparency and prevent anybody anybody who might be tempted to criticize that election or to criticize some future election because, well, if YouTube will do it now, they will do it in the future. So we have a presidential election coming up in 2024, unless, of course, Joe Biden becomes king. But if he doesn't, there will be an election in 2024, and we know in advance that we cannot criticize that election. Okay, well, I'll amend that a little bit. If the Democrat wins in 2024, we cannot criticize the election. But if the Republican wins, then everybody can criticize the election. How do I know this? Because the 2016 election, and actually even before that, just about everybody, going back to George W. Bush, when the Republican wins, the Democrats criticize the election. They have tried to get electors to change their votes. They have tried to get the electors not certified. That, in other words, everything that happened, everything the Republicans did or were accused of doing this time, the Democrats have done in the past whenever a Republican has won. So that will be okay going forward. You can criticize, and you probably, I think I'm pretty safe saying that, had Trump won in this perfectly fair, wonderful election, that Democrats would have criticized it up the wazoo, and that would have been fine. YouTube would not have required anybody to change their opinion, or would not have taken down any YouTube video that criticized the election if Trump had won. I expect that to be happening in the future, but we all want fair elections, right? Just like the one we just had. We just want that to continue. So I want to prevent these complaints. The complaints were about ballots, about fraudulent ballots. But of course, there were no fraudulent ballots. They were all fair. But we should be able to guarantee that. Now, the reason that people are saying or alleging fraud in this perfectly fair and wonderful election that we just had is because of the ballots. For instance, the Georgia State Legislature has the Georgia State Senate, at least the Judiciary Committee. They want to look at the ballots of the Georgia election, and the governor is not letting the Georgia State Legislature see the ballots. Same thing in Arizona, Maricopa County, to look at the Dominion voting machines. The legislature, the Arizona legislature, has been pressuring the county officials to turn over the machines to be audited. They had agreed to do that, then they changed their mind, last I heard. I could check and see if they changed their mind back. But the point is that The reason there is all this controversy, or could be, which of course is false because the election was fair and wonderful and Biden should be king. But the reason for this controversy, the reason it exists, is because these ballots, nobody's allowed to examine the ballots. Now, this is my idea, and it's very simple. How are the elections done now? We have these 50 separate elections, essentially, in the 50 states, and then we all sit up on election night, and sometimes days and even weeks after, but the ballots are being counted and tabulated, and totals are announced during the night. So you'll be watching the returns come in, and you'll see that so-and-so candidate has got this many votes and the other candidate has this many votes, and you just watch the totals go up over the night, and then they just announce a total, but you never see the ballots. Now, this is the 21st century, and I see no reason, and this is my idea, I see no reason why, instead of having these ballots counted behind closed doors in 50 states, why can't we count them all together? If they're going, especially if they're doing it electronically and they're scanning the ballots, and even if they're handwritten, you could still scan the ballots, but as the ballots are scanned, let the images go right onto the internet, where we can all log in and see the ballots. So the ballots would no longer be behind closed doors. So we could watch the totals come in as they're coming in. We could see the numbers just going up in real time for each candidate, but more important, all the ballots would be on the internet. Anybody would, or you would not have a situation, let's say, well, this is one of those occasions in the 2000 election, where Republicans were accused of stealing the election in Florida. But of course, that didn't happen either. So I hope, YouTube, you're taking down anybody who says that George W. Bush didn't actually win in the year 2000. But what happened was there was this controversy about it. Remember, it had to go to the Supreme Court 3 times, actually. It had to go to the Supreme Court. But after the election was over and George Bush had been certified as the winner of the election, four newspapers, Miami Herald was one of them, I don't remember the other 3, but they asked for, well, if you recall, or maybe you weren't even born at that time, I guess it's already 2021 now, but at that time, they were punch cards. That's how the voting was done. Punch cards, cardboard punch cards that would then be fed into a machine to be tabulated. So what happened was these cards, the election was so close, there was only about 500 votes that were separating the 2 candidates. So the Supreme Court ordered the Florida Supreme Court a hand count of all the ballots, and they went through and they looked at them, these punch cards. So you'd punch out these little, what they call them chads, these little square things. You've seen them before. And you punch them out, and the holes would be read by the tabulating machine. So what happened was sometimes something would be punched partly out, but not all the way out. So it would still be hanging. They called it a hanging chad. In other words, by one corner it would be hanging, or sometimes it would just be dimpled and not pushed through at all, or sometimes 2 places, 2 candidates would be dimpled, and they would hold up each one, and in front of by the way, a Democratic observer and a Republican observer, they would hold it up and they would determine the intent of that voter. Who did the voter really want to vote for? After all that was done, it was declared that Bush still was ahead in Florida, and he thereby won the election. But what I'm getting at is, after the election, these 4 papers asked for the punch cards, and they got them, and they were able to examine them themselves, and they verified that what the election officials had certified was correct, that Bush had won. It was a small amount, as I said, about 500 votes, but he had won, the point being that the newspapers were able to get the actual punch card ballots and examine them themselves. We were not able to do, or nobody did that this time. No newspaper, no news organization was able to look at any of these ballots. That's why my idea is you scan the ballots and they immediately go on onto the internet, and they are there. Any newspaper, anybody in the world can pull up all the ballots and look at them themselves to make sure that, for instance, which of course did not happen in the previous election, but because that was perfectly fair and transparent. But going forward, you would be able to see, for instance, if some of the ballots had no signatures, if they had no postmark on it. You would be able to see if the handwriting was the same on several of the ballots. You could see if some of the addresses were, post office boxes or vacant lots or something. We could all see that. They would be there, and this is the 21st century. It's a very simple matter of just, when you scan the ballots, have them go right onto the internet. There is no technical reason that I can think of why that could not be done. So that, in fact, I would, if you're going to have, that's what I would do. I would have every state do that. Just have the states put their ballots. I would have the state legislatures of all these states pass a law, make it a law that all ballots must be posted on the internet as soon as they are at the time they are being tabulated. That is my idea. Write your congressman, and then after you do that, or your senator, or both, and then give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you think would also like it. Got any comments? Comment section below the video, where you can put questions, suggestions for future topics. You could subscribe. I love getting new subscribers. And you could visit my music channel, where I put my original music performed and written by yours truly. There's a link in the description. And you could just know how much I appreciate all the time that you spend with me. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll spend more time with me. I would love to see all of you again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.